Hi, welcome to Tabletop Talks 10B Deep Snow. This really should be quite a short video. A lot of the things to do with deep snow are really just the same as the ground snow that we looked at last time. So, first thing, things that are the same. So the first thing to remember is that when you've got deep snow, the winter camouflage rules that we talked about 2 weeks ago, they're still in effect. It inhibits the movement of the spreading of fire in the same way that ground snow does. So those things are the same. The transformations, which really are just sort of mud flats and marshes, again turning into open ground, those are retained. But in addition to that, we also have brush is also turned into open ground. You're just a little bit safer in the snow. High explosive attacks, not HE equivalency, so not when you're firing anti-tank and you're looking at HE equivalency, but normal HE attacks, including OBA attacks, get a +1 TEM on the on the IFE roll to sort of show, I suppose, the cushioning effect of the snow cushioning the explosion. Minefields are much less effective. Minefields attacks are much less effective. It's actually pretty rare that you get minefields in a scenario set in deep snow anyway, but that's something to sort of bear in mind. Infantry have all of the disadvantages moving that they had in ground snow, that is the +1 movement factor going uphill or downhill, the fact that they can't use the road movement the road movement bonus unless it's a ploughed road. All those things still apply. But in addition to that, infantry have to pay a half movement factor for every hex side that they cross. The exception to that is obviously moving through buildings, that kind of thing. Roads can still be ploughed, but they're only ploughed by SSR, can't be ploughed during the game. I think so cavalry can still gallop along a ploughed road even in deep snow. Infantry still get that road bonus movement as long as they're on a ploughed road. So vehicles, it depends on whether you are a tracked vehicle or an untracked vehicle. So untracked vehicles can go along ploughed roads similar to ground snow. They can't use the half movement point movement rate. It's always 1, even if they're crew exposed. So it's a bit slower going down the roads. But tracked vehicles that move off that road, off that ploughed road, they have to pay an additional 1 movement point for every hex side that they cross. Then if you look at the untracked vehicles have a much harder time. They have to pay an additional 2 movement points for each hex side they cross off-road. But when they're on a ploughed road, they still have to pay a penalty of +1 movement point for each hex side crossed. And I suppose, if you've ever driven a car in snowy conditions, even on a road that's been treated, you'll appreciate that you need to go slower than you do in normal conditions. So everything is much slower in the snow in terms of infantry movement, in terms of vehicular movement. But of course, next week we'll come on to talk about skis and things like that, which actually means that people are able to move faster in the snow than they are in non-snow conditions. So there's a lot less opportunities for smoke. The only smoke you can get in a scenario like this is if it's emanating entirely within a building. So you could have grenade smoke, presumably within a building, but not outside the building. You can have, obviously, you can have smoke that's kind of created by wrecks and things like that. Yeah, so it's emanating from a blaze or entirely within a building. By SSR, you could also have extreme winter. I don't think any of the scenarios that we're looking at in our pack have extreme winter, so I won't talk about it in any great depth, but essentially it makes it a little bit more likely that, well, actually can be quite substantially more likely that guns will malfunction. In extreme winter, you can't dig foxholes at all during the game. Scenario designers should have set units that are affected by extreme winter to have a lower ELR than they would normally, and there's a possibility that vehicles won't start at the beginning of a scenario in extreme winter. But that's all I'm going to say about that. We're going to move on to snowdrifts. Snowdrifts. If snowdrifts are in effect from the beginning of a scenario, then there is a mechanism for placing, I think it's 6 snowdrift counters around the board randomly at the beginning. I've never come across a scenario that has that situation. But something that I think people tend to forget is that whenever ground snow or deep snow is in effect in a scenario, there is the possibility of snowdrifts forming. And whenever there is a high wind, or there are gusts in the previous player turn, before you take the new wind dice roll change, you place randomly a snowdrift on each board that is in play. Okay, so for each board in play, you take out a drift counter and you place it in hex row 5. So the drift counters have a letter. So you might take out one that says P. So you would place it in P5. Okay, so you randomly pick from the selection of counters, and it gets placed in that. That's how you find the coordinate, the letter that is referenced on the counter, and then you put it in hex row 5, and then you take a random location dice roll, so just like a sniper, and you place it. If it lands in a building, you have to place it again. You roll again. If it goes onto a different map board, you just leave it there. That's where you place it. That's fine. If it goes off ball completely, then it's lost and it isn't going to impact play. You then have to think about which direction it's placed. It only affects one hex side, so you put the counter in the hex which has been sort of randomly selected, and then you position it so it's facing the oncoming wind. If wind hasn't been in play, you might need to take a dice roll to find out which direction the wind is coming from, and then it's in play for the rest of the game. It can be removed by the roadblock method, but other than that, it remains in play and it doesn't move. It doesn't go away because of wind events. Once placed, they're essentially hedges. So they are providing a line of sight block if you're not actually adjacent to it. You catch line of sight going through it is actually blocked, and if it's a hedge, it's not specific in the rule, but I'm kind of assuming that you get the +1 TEM when you're still hunkering down behind it. But they are different to hedges, and they are much more difficult to cross. So it costs all of a infantry unit's movement factors in order to cross a drift hex side. And vehicles also, it costs all of their movement points, but they also have to take a bog check, and there would be a +2 to that bog check because you've got a +1 for snow and another one for deep snow. So you get the deep snow modifier for the bog check when it goes over, even if it is ground snow in play rather than deep snow. And so that is essentially all the times that I've ever played winter scenarios, I have never had a drift counter come into play, and it's kind of one of my sort of to-do lists. So hopefully that's going to happen, perhaps when I'm playing one of these Norwegian scenarios that is coming out soon. Next session is going to be Tabletop Talks 10C, and that's going to be on skis, Accio, and anything else to do with the winter that we haven't covered so far. Hope you've enjoyed that, hope you got something out of it, and hope you're looking forward to playing a little bit more winter warfare. Cheerio, bye-bye.